Hello, 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 hi. Hi, people. Okay. Hi. Welcome back for another week of... I don't know where I'm going with this bit. Hi, my name's Commander Poison Tongue, your commanding philosopher. Cannot speak. Back here for another week. So, this week we're going to be doing kind of a reminiscent of what we did first. Going through a little list, but instead of just ranting on, today I'm going to actually be trying to say something useful. And so today is a topic that is very near and dear to me. I don't want to say I play drums, because some people make a distinction between playing drums and playing percussion. So I play percussion. I am not a drummer in that sense, but I am a percussionist. For over 10 years I've been playing, and in that time I've gathered a whole bunch of different experiences with different types of tools, different types of techniques and equipment to use, and particularly equipment to stay away from. So today I thought, why not share some of that insight with people, with the internet in general, but also if there are any listeners who want to explore that field, that family of instruments, or if they're just starting out, or if they want to know, or if they're unfamiliar, they don't know how to approach it. I thought I could, why not share it with them? So that's what I'm going to be doing today. Today I'm going to be giving you my list. I was able to narrow it down to 10, my top 10 sticks and mallets, that is what they are called, drumsticks and keyboard mallets and other such equipment, that I think any new budding percussionist who is serious about pursuing it, serious about the art, should have in their arsenal, in their equipment bag, whatever they decide to use. Probably not going to be a terribly long stream today, unless I rant. How's my stream doing? Everything healthy. Stream health is excellent. Wonderful. I love seeing that. Okay, so what's my first? Okay, so little background on me. My experience is mostly with melodic percussion instruments. Instruments that have pitches, a range of pitches to them. Examples of this include xylophone, probably the most common, most popular, most well-known melodic percussion instrument. There is a debate on whether piano falls into the percussion category. If you don't know the inside of the piano, oh, we're already on our first tangent. All right, we'll keep going with it. If you don't know the inside of a piano, you have the key, right? You have the white key and the black keys, and they are connected to little hammers. That's what they're called. That's almost what they look like, little hammers. And when you hit the key, we press the key, you flip the lever so the hammer goes down, and it strikes a set of 3 strings inside the piano. And the set of those 3 strings together, all impacted at the same time, creates your note. So it has strings. It also has a mallet that strikes something to make a sound. So by classical definition, it could fall into either a string instrument category or the percussion instrument category. Personally, I prefer to think of it as its own separate, standalone, because there's so much that can be done with the piano that cannot be done with either percussion or the string family. So I prefer to think of it as separate. Also, it's a little nicer to say when someone asks, hey, what instrument do you play? I say percussion, and I can then say separately, also piano, and it's not thrown to that little group. But anyway, so piano notwithstanding, xylophone is probably the most popular melodic percussion instrument. In that group, most notably seen in large concerts or particularly marching band venues, are the marimba and the vibraphone. And we're going to be talking a little more about those once we get into my mallet choices for those instruments. But that is my primary area of expertise. Less so would be the objects using drumsticks, which primarily are snare drum. Sometimes you get tom-toms, tam-tams. Yes, these are real, very real percussion instruments. You learn so many different words. Talking drums, those are fun. But that's less of my expertise, so I don't have as much of a list for that. And then finally we have the big ones, the real big ones, the ones that have the most recognizable sound, and yes, yet probably the least recognizable name, the timpani. Everyone knows the sound. I would play the song for you, but it's copyrighted, but I think it's the one that comes in Odyssey, Space Odyssey, the ba 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 da, and then you hear the timpani, bum 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 bum. That is timpani. Oh, also, before we go, fun fact, in your ear, I am going on so many tangents today, but in your ear, the eardrum you have, that's not technically the scientific name for it. The proper name is the tympanous membrane. Tympanous, like timpani, because it acts very much like a timpani drumhead when it's used. So you got timpani in your head already. The more you know. Alright, let's see if I can transition to you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about are the drumsticks, because I know I'm going to be able to talk quicker and less about those. So let's see if we can transition over to, is this all set up? Yeah, that's quiet. You know, I'm going to, hold on, let me just add, because this is going to be completely silent, but I'm going to add that song, I'm going to add Sunset Venom back into this, but quieter, if I can. How do I do that? There we go. Add you. Boom. Now hold on, let me check the audio. Okay, your audio is good there, audio's good there. I'm going to bring you, you're good. Okay. On the fly scene transitions. I wish I could show you guys what OBS actually looks like. I wonder if can I? No. No, I can't. I can't show you what the streaming software actually look like. You can't stream the stream software for whatever reason. But I would show you that. I'd show you my setup. I'd show you how to manipulate it. But honestly, it's pretty not self-explanatory. It's fairly intuitive, fairly easy to use. But we'll save that for another discussion. Okay, so what you're seeing here on the screen is my first pick for drumstick. Now, this drumstick is what I use pretty much exclusively. And I use it for almost everything. But before I get into that, you see the little logo. I don't know if you can see my cursor. You see right up here, Vic Firth. So Vic Firth is a name. If you're entering the world of percussion, Vic Firth is a name that you should definitely know if you don't already. Vic Firth is one of the top manufacturers of all all equipment, playing equipment, percussion-wise. Keyboard sticks, keyboard mallets, not keyboard sticks, drumsticks, keyboard mallets, and a whole bunch of other more cultural things, like root, or, well, I'll demonstrate it later. But yeah, so all these things are in Vic Firth. And they have such an expansive list, and they work with all these different musicians and artists to create Signature Series. Signature Series is really just a drumstick that is either custom designed or the drumstick of preference with a couple modifications of any particular artist. And this one is one that I happened across, and ever since I started playing with it, I mean, my goodness, it's one of my favorites to use. Ne Rizzaro, that's the guy's name, and it's his signature drumstick. Now, when I use drumsticks, the things that I look for, you know, making sure it's actually a good, decent stick to use is rebound, it's the weight, and less important, but still important, the coating, the finish. Now the coating is important because it determines how well you can grip the stick. If it's like a smooth gloss, then, you get really into it, and then your hands start sweating, because hands always start sweating whenever you're playing percussion, either for a long time or for a very vigorous session. Hands get sweaty. Stick is a glossy finish. It slides right out of your hand. You've seen I've seen a video of like some drummer rocking out on the drum set mid-concert. He throws his arms up, and his hands come down, and the sticks are not with them. The sticks go flying out over the audience. I mean, great souvenir if you don't take your eye out, but yeah, we try to avoid that whenever we can. Not so good when you're being judged for it. Like a rock concert, sure, it adds flair. A marching band competition, you might get points deducted. So it depends on the venue. But then the weight, you don't want it too heavy, you don't want it too light. If it's too light, then it won't really be able to feel it, and you won't be able to control it as well. But if it's too heavy, it may be too much for the subtle muscle motion, the very, very subtle muscle motions in your fingers to control with any level of finesse. But the most important is, for me, the rebound. And that is really the key for playing with drumsticks. The rebound off of the drum head. You want the natural bounce of the stick to bring it up as much as it can without your muscles actually pulling it up. Your muscles need to be relaxed, so the rebound of the stick moves it up rather than your own hand, and then you can focus on just the downstroke. So how a stick can be designed to have a strong rebound or a weak rebound. This one has, I don't really know how to explain it, but it's like the perfect level of rebound. It feels amazing, and I've lent these out to other friends during concerts, and they've told me it's a great pair of drumsticks to use. So this would be my go-to. This would be my go-to for pretty much any concert. Whether you're doing it in a concert, you're playing outside, inside, playing in a marching band in the pit. These are not marching sticks. I want to clarify, these are not marching snare drumsticks. Those need to be a lot beefier, a lot more resilient. There's a whole different philosophy for designing those. We're not talking about those, plus that's outside of my area of expertise. But these are drumsticks that I would recommend you to get if you are serious about pursuing percussion and you're just starting out. You don't have a massive collection of drumsticks and mallets that you've bought or collected or picked up off the ground over the years. If you're just starting out, I would wholeheartedly recommend these. Absolutely, definitely. What does it actually say? Elongated tip with increased surface area, enhanced sound quality, long taper, quite rebound, excellent rebound. Yep, I agree. With a slight taper toward the butt, enhances balance in hickory. Yeah, so hickory, that's just one of the most common types of wood that drumsticks are made of. Drumsticks tend to be made out of hickory. Keyboard mallets tend to be made out of birch, but we'll go into that later once we get to the mallet section. I wonder if I can click on the picture. It doesn't zoom in. But you can see this section right here, right there. You see you have the head, or the bead of the drumstick right there. You have it taper, which goes from really thin to the natural diameter. This is a taper section. It's pretty long relative to other drumsticks, and we'll see that in the next two tabs. Then you have, of course, the Vic Firth brand. You have the signature of the particular artist, Ney Rosario, and that little American flag. That just goes on all the Vic Firth products. It's kind of a guide of where to kind of place your thumb sometimes. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but whenever I play, I tend to place my thumb right on the flag, and it gets the right amount of rebound. And then this little indent right here at the back end, this is what they say. They don't say it here, but this little notch, sometimes they make a notch and they make this last little bit out of a different type of wood, or they make it with a little rubber or a little more, maybe it's even metal, just for a heavier tip. And what that does is, in your hand, the drumstick acts kind of like a lever. You pinch with your thumb and your forefinger to create the fulcrum, where the majority of the stick with the bead is coming forward and the back end is coming backwards. Sometime, if you have a heavier tip, either it's a larger diameter tip or it's made of something heavier like maybe steel or nylon usually. Very rarely do you see steel tip, but mostly nylon or wood. But if you have a very short taper, which means you have a lot more wood material in the front, sometimes to balance that out, you need a heavier butt end just to make it balanced. It does add more weight, so if you have beefier hands or if you like more weight of your drumsticks, that would be the stick for you. If you have maybe small hands or you prefer the lighter stick, you should probably stay away. But this is my pick for my overall general use, nearly every situation drumstick. The Symphonic Collection Ne Rizzaro by Vic Firth. Not sponsored. Okay, now we're gonna go, let's see, we talked about that one. Okay, so that's my drumstick for use. What you will hear more often is this one. The American Custom SD1 General. Round tip, ideal for orchestral work, rock and band, a legendary practice stick. And it really is. But first I want to draw your attention. You see right here, here's the bead of the stick. You can tell here, the Ne Rizzaro, is a lot more oval shaped and a very long taper. Here you have a more spherical shape and a very short taper. So this amount of taper is pretty standardized. You see how long the constant diameter section is, how long the barrel is, the body of the stick. And again, American flag, there it is. So it says practice stick. Now this is the general drumstick that you tend to get in a lot of starter sets and a lot of, beginner packets. It comes with an SD1 General. It's great for learning in like a school setting or like a school concert band or just like taking it on the road. They're pretty strong, pretty robust sticks, so you can really beat them up. You can start playing around a whole bunch of different surfaces and they'll be pretty okay. They'll be pretty resistant. You got like a very average kind of performance. That's really what this drumstick is. It's pretty much average across the board. It's not spectacular in any one field, but it doesn't really fall short in any one field either. It's kind of run-of-the-mill. So that's why most people tend to use this one, and then they carry it through from practice into performance, which is okay. But if you want to do more specialized, I still recommend the Ne Rizzaro. I would also recommend, if this is already maybe just given to you, most likely if you are starting out, you will already have this one. But yeah, for practice, for taking it on the road, or for just having an extra spare set of drumsticks to beat up if you want to play more vigorously or you want to play things other than drumsticks, other than drums, like maybe you want to wail on the cymbals, or you want to do some rim shots. Rim shots are where you hit the head of the drum and the rim of the drum at the exact same time with the same stick. Creates like this harmonic sound that kind of combines the sound of the head and the sound of the rim in a way that's more than the sum of its parts. And it makes this very sharp crack that echoes. It's a rim shot. And it's very aggressive and abusive on the material of your drumsticks. So this drumstick I would use for that. I would not use a Ne Rizzaro for a rim shot because it will rip your sticks apart. But yeah, if you're doing any more vigorous stuff, go with the General. It's a great drumstick all around. And honestly, you can't really go wrong with this if you decide to not get the Rizzaro and just stick with the General. That's a very good choice too. Now you can ignore this whole currently out of stock thing. We'll touch on that at the very end. Now, if you are someone already in the know about the field of percussion and the drumsticks that tend to be in and out of style, there is another name, another brand of the Vic Firth drumstick line that you may hear that I deliberately left out of my list. And that is what's known as the 5/8 5A. Now I'm going to actually go look it up. American Classic 5A. Now what they say, teardrop shape. So here's yet another style. In the SD1 we saw a spherical. In the Nerizara we saw oval shaped. Here we have teardrop shape. Now teardrop and spherical tend to be the most common bead types, or drumstick head, drumstick bead, the bead of the stick. The bead types of shapes, teardrop or spherical. And they do have different sounds, different amounts of surface area, different amount of rebound response. It's really up to your preference. Relatively long taper, not terribly long. But the #1 stick in the world, great for every style of music. And they say that for a reason. It really is the most popular drumstick. Vic Firth brand notwithstanding, it is the most popular drumstick in the world, and I deliberately left it off of my list for 3 reasons. First, I have never owned it, I have never played with it. I don't know how they feel, I don't know how they respond, I don't know if I would like them or not. Water break. Number 2, I like to experience it first, rather than just taking the word for it. Sometimes I was tempted to just put it on the list just because of all the different user feedback and reviews and their own website. They all say it's the greatest stick, it's great to have. Sometimes that would be good enough for me to try it out, but I'd rather feel it for myself because I built this list based on my own experience. This would be the oddball, and I wouldn't really know what to say from an experience standpoint. And 3, it's the #1 stick in the world. If you do your research, you've already heard of this, you already know what it is, even if you don't know it by name. Like all the greatest rock groups, if they don't use their own signature drumstick, they're probably using a 5A, whether in a concert or for a professional orchestra or for a rock band. 5A is the most popular, the most common that you will find. So it doesn't even need to be on this list. But yeah, that is the 5A. That is what I left out. I still stand by the SD1 General. Now, the one other thing that doesn't really fall into this category, but still kind of does, is the next tab. The Corpse Master Snare Chop Out. Now right away, I want to bring your attention to 2 things. 1, take a close look at just the width of this drumstick. Now here's the other 2. This is rather thin. This one's a bit beefier. This one's the beefiest. Now that's because this is modeled after a marching snare drumstick. And they need to be strong because drumsticks in the marching band field get probably the most abuse in terms of how loud you play, how much you play, how vigorous you play, how many alternate types of sounds and different places you play on the drum. Maybe you play normally mostly on the head of the drum, sometimes you play on the rim, sometimes you play on the side, you do rim shots left and right. You're constantly ripping those things apart. The paint starts to chip, maybe it cracks down the middle. These things are abused like crazy. So in my school, my marching band had like 5 different pairs per person, per player, just with 4 of them just as backups. And since they're all the same stick, you could just take one at the other and it's like a whole brand new set. But yeah, they went through those sticks like crazy. So they need to be strong, they need to be resilient, so they are a bit beefier. The second thing is probably the most important part, and the whole reason this is on this list, the tip. The tip is made of rubber. Now, the rubber tip, I had these back when they were under a different name. If anyone's watching who knows the history, these used to be called Scojos, because they used to be a signature series, Scott Johnson. And I don't know why they changed the name. Might be some drama, might be some legality, logistics, I don't know. But they used to be called Scojos. And that's really what they had printed on the stick, Scott Johnson Scojos. They were the practice stick. Because of the rubber tip, they give you that rebound. Remember, rebound is one of the most important things in your practicing or performing drumming. This is a practice stick, or special effects, but mostly for practice. Because of the rubber tip, you can play them and get a rebounded feel that's close to an actual drum head on literally almost any other hard surface. You could play on a coffee table, you could play on a steel chair, you could play on a marble countertop, you can play on a wood-paneled wall, you can play on the brick wall at a school basement. I don't know why you're in the basement school, but you can play on almost anything. A bus, what was it called? The back of the bus seat. You can play on a train rail. Don't actually play on a train rail, but you can play on almost anything, and it'll have a really decent, not entirely representative, but representative enough rebound to actually get to practice your rhythms, your syncopation, your sticking, which hand goes left, which hand goes right, in what order, your rhythms, your paradiddles, all of that stuff. It's a practice stick, and the reason this is on this list is because you can take it anywhere and you can get practicing. And if you don't have a drum pad, alternatively you could buy a practice pad, which is just a disc with different types of material. Sometimes they're hard rubber, sometimes soft rubber, and you would put that on your lap and you take your real drumsticks, the one you normally use, and you just play on that. This kind of combines both into, the drum pad is built into the bead of the stick. So it's a lot smaller, a lot more compact, a lot more versatile. So if you are serious about percussion and you have a tendency towards the snare drum and the other instruments that are played with this stick, I would definitely recommend getting these chop outs, I guess they're called now. Get the Scojos, get the chop outs, get them. You could also practice sticking with something you do on mallets, because some mallet keyboard instruments do have a little bit of rebound, and on the right material you can emulate that. But these are all-around practice sticks. SD1 General, practice stick on an actual snare drum instrument, and then Nerizaro, Symphonic Collection, for all-around actual use during performances, like actually on stage in front of an audience. So those are my top 3 drumsticks that I would suggest for any budding percussionist who really wants to explore the field to have in their possession. The Nerizaro Signature Series drumsticks for general use, the American Custom SD1 General for practicing and, leading up to the final performance, and then the Corpse Master Snare chop outs for on-the-go mobile practice. But also, these are fairly easy to just hand to someone else if you are talking to someone on the road or in the hallway and you have them with you and they say, "Oh, you play percussion? Oh, I've always been curious about playing that. I wonder if you can teach me sometime." I don't know how rarely that happens, but if it does, you can whip these sticks out, find a brick wall, and then boom, lesson begins, number 1. They're very versatile. They're very useful. I get my water. Okay, so we've talked enough about drumsticks. Now, the next 2 tabs are what we talked about earlier, timpani. Now, I am also I love playing the timpani as well. It's probably my second favorite class of instruments behind the melodic keyboard percussion instruments. And these are my favorite timpani sticks to use. The T2 American Custom Timpani Cartwheels. And they're called cartwheels because timpani drumsticks, the head of the drumstick, you don't really call this the bead, you call this the head of the timpani stick. It doesn't look like any really other. Most of them look like, I'll give you a sneak peek, look like this, very round. But these are like a flattened marshmallow. Dang, now I want a s'more, I made myself hungry. But they're like a flattened marshmallow. These are incredible for soft hits. you hit it. You know, whenever we play piano together, we do our improv, I always talk about I want a sound with like a lot of articulation, a lot of attack, or very little articulation, no attack. This is what I'm talking about. The drumsticks, these cartwheels have almost no discernible attack sound. It's just the sound of the timpani just kind of appears. And if you play softly, if you do rolls, or if you want just a very strong sound with no real defined beginning, cartwheels are in. Cartwheels I tend to use almost exclusively, no matter what the song, no matter what the dynamic, no matter what the speed, what the tempo, what the ferocity. I use cartwheels almost all the time. Except when I need to be very aggressive, in which case I switch to my T1s, my American Custom Timpani, the Generals. So that's the second General we've had. We've had the SD1 General, now we have the T1 General. And the Generals are generally, usually what's good and what lasts you maybe 2-3 years, 4 or 5 if you take good care of them. I like to take good care of them. They all come in their own little plastic sleeve when they arrive in the mail. For the timpani sticks, would have like a felt head, which can fuzz and rip apart pretty easily. I tend to keep them in their sleeves when I put them away. Drumsticks, not really, it's just wood. But for some mallets, and especially these soft felt, I definitely keep them in the sleeve. They've lasted such a long time. But these definitely give you that attack. There's another level above it called the T3, which is more very, very rough, very staccato. But it's almost too staccato. It's almost too specialized to the sharp attack, the loud hit, and if you hit loud enough, you kind of get this little fear in the back of your head that maybe you're just going to puncture the timpani head, just puncture right through. With these T1s, you can hit as loud as you want. You will not get that fear, at least for me. But yeah, it definitely gives you the articulation you need. I've never had to switch to a T1. Like I play T2, sometimes they say you want a better attack. I switch to the T1. I've never switched to a T1, and the conductor or the percussion lead never says they still want more attack. So depending on how well you play it, the T1 will give you all the attack you'll ever need. And then when I need to go to a roll and I have time to switch out, I will switch back to the T2s and keep going with those. That's a very short list because there isn't a whole lot of diversity in terms of timpani mallets relative to the diversity in keyboard and drumsticks. It's pretty specialized because it's just one set of instruments, and yet I still have 2 different ones. So if you're tight on a budget or you can only have one, I would definitely recommend T2. If you have the money and the space and the interest, I would also get a T1. T1 is again the one that comes in like the starter packs that you also get the SD1 Generals, so odds are you may already have this one, in which case I would definitely recommend going out and getting the T2 cartwheels. Plus, it's such a cool name for a timpani stick, a cartwheel. You almost forget what a cartwheel is if you're not around it. Okay, so that is the first 5 items. We are halfway done with our list. So we talked about our 3 drumsticks, we talked about our 2 timpani sticks. That gets out of the way all the stuff that I am not as immersed in, not as comfortable with. From here on out, we're just going to be talking about what is really my specialty, what is near and dear to my heart, and I'm probably going to geek out a little more. So I'm going to try to take my time, try to slow down a bit. But we're already 30 minutes in. Actually, we're doing pretty well on time. We don't need to take a break yet. We talked about those. Okay. Big surprise. The first one on the list. Actually, no. I'll preface this. I'll preface it a little bit. So, back to me, for instance. Okay. So before we move on to the last half of the list, I want to preface it, talk a little bit about the history of not the history, but the background of the melodic keyboard instruments. Actually, no. I changed my mind. I'm just going to jump right into it. Because it's easy to just showcase it when it's right in front of you. There's a name we're familiar with. I may or may not be a little biased, but here's another Neirazaro signature mallet. It doesn't say signature, it has an actual designation, M228. That is the code in the Vic Firth software. But he has a set of mallets that most of which have disappeared from this website since I last looked at it, oddly enough. I guess they're not as popular. But this is one of his more general. Okay, now, here's the context. Xylophone is made of wooden keys. They're very thick, they're very blocky, and they have a very blocky kind of sound. Now, I'm not talking about like the toy xylophones you get. I'm talking about like the actual professional marching band, full orchestra concert xylophones. They're really good ones, really high quality ones. They have a very blocky keys with blocky sound. The marimba is like a xylophone that just extends the range on both sides. The keys are also made of wood, but instead of being more square, cross-sectional, more blocky, they're essentially flattened. They're flattened and they're widened. And like if you took a xylophone key and you just put it in a press, it gets flatter, it gets wider side to side, and it gets longer top to bottom. That's basically a marimba key. Has a very, almost like a hollow sound. Very prominent in The Lion King, actually. In a lot of the Lion King score, you know, based on African types of instruments and sounds, the marimba has its roots in that culture. So it's a very woody, very almost tribal sound. But it is one of the #1 instruments used in marching band because it has such a large spread of keys and it's such a visually appealing, visually involved method of playing. And then you have the vibraphone. Vibraphone is a bit of an exception in that it's kind of a combination of a marimba, a glockenspiel, and a piano. Now, a glockenspiel is what people call the bells. It's usually the most starting out. It's the very high-pitched, like the very tiny, the bars are made of some sort of metal. I think they might be steel, I'm not sure. They're very small keys. They're very high-pitched notes. We'll touch on that later. Vibraphone, the keys kind of look like marimba keys. They're flat, they're short, but they are also made entirely out of metal. And so they ring. And they have a pedal, like a piano does. So the pedal, you press the pedal down, the notes ring, you lift the pedal up, it muffles them. Pedal is connected to like a little felt pad that just pushes up against the keys to muffle them, and by pushing the pedal down, you just lift the pad away, or you lower the pad away from the keys, allowing them to ring. We talked about this in an earlier piano video when we had in an earlier composition video, right, when we were composing Toxic Moonlight. We talked about the vibe. This is the vibraphone, vibe. They have the wah 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 kind of thing. Those are the little fans that spin beneath the keys and the pipes. That's a vibraphone. Metal, well, I'll talk to that in a second. Going back to our list, these mallets are made of a synthetic yarn. Now you can see down here the head material and color. Head material is yarn, the head color is black with the yellow ring right there. So I actually heard this in a video from Neirazaro himself. It's a synthetic yarn, not just a pure traditionally strung yarn. So it has a good sound on a vibraphone and a marimba and a xylophone. Not a glockenspiel. Glockenspiel usually requires a hard, usually a metal headed mallet to play, but that comes at the very end. But these are very good for strong hits. They are a bit heavier, but they're very good for, they are long, they're very long. These are, if you look at the length of the shaft, this is long compared to the normal length of a lot of keyboard mallets. So if you want a lot of reach, especially if you're playing the marimba where you want to kind of sway back and forth, but it has a long range on either side, allows you to hit those. And yeah, these are just a very good general mallet to use that's not specialized and not restricted to one particular instrument. And that's kind of the goal, kind of the whole purpose of this list, is that nothing is really specialized to just one thing. Like T1, even though I said it's mostly just for hard hits, you can do rolls, you can do soft. It's kind of in the middle, in the run-of-the-mill. So everything you can do with a T2, you can do with the T1 and get pretty close. Course master, practice anywhere, not specialized. General, practice anything. Nerezaro drumstick, practice performing almost anywhere. So it's a very general use kind of list that I put together. And this is kind of his philosophy, which is kind of like why I like his product so much. It sounds great on marimba, sounds great on vibe. Not as much on xylophone. Xylophone needs a little more of a plasticky mallet head rather than a yarn or cord. Cord is usually for vibraphone, yarn is usually for marimba. This is synthetic yarn, so it's good for both. Wow, really need to drink more water. Yeah, that's my pick. Now, the next tab, I will not say to get it as well as this one. I'm actually going to reduce my list to 9 and say these two, this tab and this one, the blue one, to pick one of these two and get them. Now you can't see it in the picture because the picture is zoomed up just so, but the handle on this is much shorter, much shorter. The head on this one is just that much bigger than this one. But this is made of, as you can see, cord. So mostly, cord is good for vibraphone. But I've used these on vibraphone and marimba. They have a bit less of a cushioned sound than the Rezaro black-headed mallets. The blue-headed ones, they were technically my first set of multi-use keyboard mallets. And they sounded incredible, and I still use them sometimes. Sometimes I still pick them over this. If I'm playing marimba, I'll usually go to this. If I'm playing vibe, usually go to this. But sometimes I go back and forth. These feel incredible. They're very light, they're very fast, and you can do a lot with them, and they will last you a long time. So yeah, so I would suggest if you want something a bit longer, maybe a bit heavier, go with the M228. Just like the drumsticks. If you want a heavier stick, you'd want a beefier one. If you want a lighter stick, go with a thinner one. If you want a lighter keyboard mallet that is equally good, vibraphone and marimba, go with the Terry Gibbs, the M31 blue-headed mallet. He also has a red and a green, but I go with the blue. Blue is kind of in the middle. So yeah, so I would say pick one of these two. Now, before we get to the next one, what I want to call out is something that both of these have in common, and that is handle material. It says rattan. Handle material rattan. I mentioned earlier when I talked about the Nerezaro, it says in hickory. Drumsticks are made of hickory, and keyboard mallets are made of birch. They could also be made of, instead of birch, made of rattan. Rattan has its pros and cons. Rattan is very flexible. It's bendy. If you wave it back and forth, it's like it's made of plastic, because it's a very plasticky kind of wood. It's very flexible. So if you're playing just two mallets, and you're playing like loud or playing soft, or you just want to like be able to comfortably play without fear of breaking the shaft of the stick, I go rattan. Rattan is very friendly and very forgiving of making mistakes. It's very accommodating to whatever dynamic level or whatever speed you want to play as. So I go with rattan. That being said, I actually go the complete opposite when you're playing 4 mallets. Now that is a very common technique for marimba and vibraphone, but mostly marimba, in particularly marching band contexts. And that's where you hold 2 mallets in each hand, and you control all 4 of them. You can control each one independently of the other 3. And there's several different types of grip philosophies and grip techniques for using that. I got pretty good at what's called Stevens grip, but I can also do what's it called, the Burton grip, and then not so much the traditional. Traditional is kind of a little more behind the times, but the Burton's grip is very good. A lot of jazz players on the vibraphone play with Burton's grip because the hands grips are not symmetrical left to right. In Stevens grip, a lot of concert players on marimba play with Stevens because it is symmetrical and it's very visually appealing when you control 1 mallet at a time. So when I play with 4 mallets, I use birch. I want to use a rigid material for the mallet stick, for the mallet handle. And the reason for that is because instead of holding the stick with basically all 5 fingers, you're holding each mallet with only 2 or 3. So every time you hit or you move the mallet, that inertia of the stick moving through space translates into the handle and the head. And since the handle is flexible, it allows the head to move to a greater degree, which causes more flex in the rattan handle, which causes more of a strain on your hand, on your 3 or 2 fingers trying to hold it in place. And again, like I said, your hands get sweaty when you're playing a lot. Sweaty fingers and only 2 fingers holding onto a stick, and a lot of flex and pull from a rattan enhanced inertia, it's going to be very difficult to control those mallets. Make it of birch, usually a lot thinner than the rattan, so you can get a much tighter grip on it. There's no flex, and there's no guessing. There's no guessing. Sometimes with rattan, if you strike down hard enough, you move your hand down, but because the rattan can flex, the head doesn't go down exactly with it. The handle flexes and the head follows. It trails behind the main force. But when you're controlling 4 mallets, timing is ultra important, because often you're playing each of the 4 mallets in rapid succession. If any of them is late, it's very apparent, it sounds horrible. So as soon as you want to strike, you want the sound to be nearly immediate. Having a birch, a rigid connection, helps with that. And you rarely, I won't say rarely, unless you're one of the professionals, you can rarely strike the keyboard with a mallet held through 4 with as much ferociousness and ferocity as if you only had 1. You can get a lot more force behind it. So you don't need to worry about shattering or snapping or fraying or breaking the handles, which is again why I use rattan when I'm doing 1 mallet each hand. I use birch when I do 2, and these again are general. They're not too hard, they're not too soft. They can get a very strong articulate attack, but they can also play a very nice melodic run on the marimba that I've tried. But it has enough attack that you can play it quietly and you can still distinctly hear each note, while not playing so loud that when you wail on it, all you hear is a crack and the actual pitch doesn't come through. You do hear the pitch. Now, in some starter packs, these are given to you along with maybe I think the T1 is also given to you with this. So you may already have these, but it only gives you one pair. So if you have a pair, get another pair, and I would use that exclusively for 4-mallet technique on a marimba or a vibraphone. It works pretty well either way. It does say it's made of synthetic yarn, kind of why it helps. Whew. So yeah, so we talked about your choice of these 2 mallets for single-handed playing, vibraphone or marimba, and we talked about this mallet for 4-mallet playing, either vibraphone or marimba. I don't know what I just did. Let's see what's next on my list. Okay, so we talked earlier about how the xylophone and the bells were kind of excluded from the discussion of these past 3. Well, now we're going to get into that. This xylophone is my personal favorite instrument to play, and these mallets are my personal favorite to play them with. The head is... You might be able to fool me if you just take a rattan handle and just stick a commercially available ping pong ball on the end of it. It's made of... what? Polycarbonate? Polycarbonate. But it's on a rattan shaft, because again, I use 2 mallets. And xylophone, because it's such a short-lived echo, you know how we can't play. You know how we play piano? You hit a single note, even with the pedal down, it doesn't last very long on some sounds, and it lasts almost forever on others. Marimba fades quickly, but it does last. Vibe with the pedal up dampens almost immediately. With the pedal down, it never stops. Xylophone lasts shorter than a marimba. And because of that, whenever you write xylophone, you often write a flurry of notes very quickly. And so you need a lot of rebound and a very crisp sound in order to have all of those notes come out clearly, rather than just having it sound like you're just scraping a fork down the edge, just up and down. I miss playing xylophone. But these mallets are incredible. They have like an amazing... They are big on the head, and so you do run the risk of hitting one mallet with the other. As one comes up, the other comes down if you're rolling on the same note. But that's where the rebound comes in. It gives you a little boost to get the stick out of the way once it's hit, and you can hit with the next one in rapid succession. Plus, it just looks amazing when you just look at it from the side and you see someone playing really fast. It looks so cool. But these are exclusively used on xylophone. I don't use anything else. And officially, it says down here, they're for marching band. That's what we used for our marching band xylophone where I was playing. And I liked them so much, I bought my own personal pair. And once I got these, I tried other xylophone mallets. I never went back. These are like absolute end of the day. These are perfect for me on xylophone. Now, this does break a little bit into my philosophy of this list only containing general use. There are other xylophone mallets in this website that would work better for bells and glockenspiel and still decently well for xylophone. So I'm kind of breaking from that and just going with what my personal experience tells me and going, these are almost exclusively to be used for xylophone, but it's the only xylophone mallets you'll ever need. And I just get so excited when I get to play with these that I had to put these on the list. If you could use them on the bells, on the glockenspiel. Sometimes people say bells and glockenspiel. They're really talking about the same thing. It's like the smaller metallic version of a xylophone. It has a very soft articulation, very soft attack, very quiet sound. Traditionally for bells, you want to use something like this. Phenolic material. These can also be used on xylophone. They are a very piercing, almost ear-splitting sound on the xylophone, whereas these are a bit more of a softer, brighter sound. I prefer the sound that these make more than this, but I will still play xylophone with these. This is what you would get, the M6, which again is part of that general package you can get, because these sound equally well on xylophone and on glockenspiel and on the bells. They're birch handles, they're made of phenolic material, very small head, very small mallet head, but they do give you the brightness and the attack on the bells and a very sharp piercing sound on the xylophone that sometimes you need if you want to cut through all the other instruments playing at the same time. But I personally would only use these for bells. You could also use these are also good for other accessories. There's something called a bell tree. And it's not melodic like the bells, it's a bell tree. It's if you take like a copper bowl and you shrink it down to the size of a golf ball. You place it upside down, you suspend it from the middle, so it's kind of like hanging from its center upside down. You can hit it, it sounds like a little bell. Now if you layer it with some space in between with consecutively larger bowls, you get a tree that's like wide at the top and goes thinner as you go down, or sometimes the other way around. But it's a bell tree, and you take a mallet like this and you just put it on the top and you slide it down, and it gets that ring or ring. I did not do that justice whatsoever, but it has a very bright, like I just got an idea, flight of fancy kind of sound. Mallets like these are great for that. Sometimes you get like silver tipped or gold tipped. They're not actually silver or gold, but harder steel rather than phenolic material. But if you just want one pair that can do a whole bunch, you can do these. If you want to hit on a wood block, sometimes you can use a drumstick, sometimes you can use a mallet like this. If you want to play like some hard thing on the cymbals, like a little hit, or if you want to play, I don't know, some sharp sounding hits on a tambourine, maybe, the rim of a tambourine. You can use a drumstick for that, you can use this for that. So all of these are versatile, especially when it comes to the accessories that don't have a particular style of playing. I wouldn't use this on a triangle. Triangle has its own little stick, but if you did, it wouldn't sound terrible. So that is my list. That is all 10. That is drumsticks, Nehmer's symphonic, general use, SD1 general, practice and more vigorous playing on like stuff you could beat up the stick with. The chop outs, practice anywhere you go. T1 cartwheels, softer sounds, general use, sound amazing. T1, if you want that articulation that the cartwheels don't give you. M228, Rosario general keyboard, the black-headed ones. Good if you want extended range, bit heavier a mallet, bit harder of an attack. The M31, Terry Gibbs, instead of the M228, a little shorter mallet, a little lighter, and cord instead of yarn. The M3s, great for 4-mallet playing on vibraphone or marimba. The M63s, the coarse magic keyboard medium, polycarbonate, pretty much exclusively marimba and maybe some soft hits on the bells with very little attack. And finally the M6, the custom keyboard hard, the phenolic, for normal bell playing, sharp piercing xylophone playing, and a whole bunch of accessory playing. Those are my top 10 list. Now you notice there's another tab here. And I am out of water, but we're almost done. It's going to be a shorter stream today. But there's a tab here. This is called Steve Weiss. Now you notice, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3. So there's 3 of these on these lists that are no longer in stock. I love Vic Firth products. I really do. I love them. I never order from their website. I order from Steve Weiss. Steve Weiss is not exclusively Vic Firth. As you can see, they have all their brands down here. Vic Firth, they have Zildjian, they have Mallet, Marimba One, they have Encore, Cooperman, whole bunch. But this is what I use to shop. This is what I use to buy all of it. And they have a greater selection. You can actually see, if you just go to the Vic Firth section, they have all these different mallets. They have Vic Firth earplugs, if you need them. Personally, I would not get Vic Firth earplugs. I get earplugs from an actual earplug place. But Steve Weiss also sells instruments. Like here is a marimba. A 5-octave marimba. $13,000. But this is what a marimba looks like. This is an upside down view. You would stand, I don't know if you can see that. You should be able to see that. Let me just check the stream, see if it catches up. Yep, you can see that. Okay, yeah. So right here is where you would stand. You see all the keys that are lined up? Those are like the white keys of the piano. And all these keys that have spacing between them, those are like the black keys. And these gold things underneath, those are hollow pipes that allow the sound to travel through, resonate, and become a bit louder. This is what you would play with 4 mallets, with those yellow birch-handled mallets. $13,000. This is a professional. This is a high-quality marimba right there. Electronic percussion. See, the thing about electronic percussion is that it's all digital, so the actual type of stick you use doesn't matter in terms of the instrument sound. It's just purely a matter of how it feels in your hand. Like this drum set right here. The cymbals are made of, the drum heads are made of rubber or a mesh or something. And then you have the cymbals, which are made of just rubber discs. So you can hit the rubber disc with a phenolic mallet. You can hit the rubber disc with a wood-tipped drumstick. You can hit the rubber disc with a yarn-coated keyboard mallet. It doesn't matter. It'll still kind of have the same sound. It just matters how it feels in your hand. So if you're considering getting electronic, your choice in drum set doesn't actually matter as much in terms of the sound you get, mostly just in terms of the feel in your hand. So let's see. I want to see if I can find a vibraphone to show you. Oh, wait, right here. So here is a vibraphone. So again, you would stand here, there's the pedal, and you can't see it, but there's, let me see if I can find a better picture one. I don't really have a good one. Let's see if this one has it. Not so much. Here's a really fancy one. A really fancy one. You can almost tell because it's gold. But yeah, you would stand here. You see they're all flat. They're all even. Oh, that's something I should also bring up. Let's go to, hold on, let's go back to that. Let's go down to U. So I don't know if you can tell, but these upper keys are lifted above in height above the lower keys right here. And that's done on purpose. Xylophones are the same way. Vibraphones and the bells, the glockenspiel, are all flat. They're all the same level. I don't know if there's a particular reason for that. This I think might be they're all flat because there could be a motor that automatically spins those fans inside these pipes and creates that wah 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 sound. And it's easier if it's all the same level rather than raised up. You have to sort of tweak the belt that runs between them. And for bells, it's probably flat because you want to compact it. And actually, no, I've seen bells that are flat and that are raised. Bells, I think the bells can be either way. But yeah, vibes are flat. This is such a nice vibe. Xylophone. You notice right away, xylophone is a lot smaller. It's not as expansive in range as the marimba. It's raised up and made of wood. They're a lot blockier keys, and it's got a lot shorter of pipes down here. That's because the xylophone doesn't resonate that much, so it doesn't need as much pipe. And it's very light, very small. It's my favorite keyboard instrument to play. And now I'll talk about the bell. See, bells, glockenspiel, sometimes they're interchangeable. They're under the same category here. What's an expensive one look like? This is like a very cheap one there. But these are bells. Now it's in a little carrying case, so there's another one that just closes up inside it. You carry it around like a suitcase, a very, very heavy suitcase. Yeah, these are strictly metal bars. So you would play these with the phenolic, the black round ones, these guys. And let's look at timpani. These can go up to almost 22,000. I think that's if you get all 5 timpani drums, $22,000. But these are the timpani drums. You can see here is the head of the drum where you'd play. Here's the rim. You don't really play on the rim of a timpani. There's not a lot of techniques or songs that go for that. Now timpani, they have a pedal. Timpani, the pitch is not set. You can adjust the pitch between a limited range of notes by tightening the firmness of the rim on the head, and that tightness is controlled by this pedal. You depress it, or you press it down on the toe, press it down on the heel. So a lot of common and advanced timpani songs have you making pitch changes mid-song, like all the time. And you don't usually have time to test out the drum, hit it a couple times quietly, put your ear next to it to make sure you got the right pitch. You just have to kind of know how far to move your foot to go from one pitch to another. It takes time to get used to, and every timpani can be different. But yeah, timpani is so much fun to play, because you really get to go wild with your arms. You get to wail on it. It's so much fun. They don't have marching, but I'm under concert. And then you've probably all seen a snare drum. Yeah, here's a snare drum. I wonder if it shows you the actual snares. Why they call it a snare drum, if you can see it, they kind of just have a side view. They don't have a front view. I think here's the best one I could get. $1,000. Oh yeah, here they are. Here are the snares. So the snares are these. 3 different types of material, all with different, some are like little coils, some are just straight, some are made of like a small little mesh chain. And normally they just hang loose beneath the drum. And you hit on the opposite side, you hit on this side. This is actually looking at the underneath. And it sounds like a tom-tom. Not quite a bongo, but very loose. A snare, these are snares. You turn this lever, it tightens these against this surface, and when you hit it, you get that classic snare drum sound. So something that we need to make sure of when we play is not to accidentally turn the snares off mid-concert, mid-performance, because it's a very loud, very distinct sound, and it's very noticeable when you don't have it. I wonder if can I? Marching snare. So these are marching band snares. Yeah, so the whole field, the whole world of marching percussion is a completely different beast. So my list will not really apply, except maybe the chop outs for practicing, but again, they're just for practice. But yeah, so there's a whole, and I was never involved in the marching percussive drums. I was in the pit, where they stand still, and they don't move. Well, they move, but they don't march. So I don't have the expertise to talk about the type of snare drums, type of snare mallets, and everything like that. But yeah, this is all Steve Weiss. You can browse on this. You're not limited to Vic Firth this way. I just trust Vic Firth, because it's what I've always used, and they've always worked well for me. So I don't need this anymore, and I don't, yeah, so Steve Weiss Percussion. That's where I would use to get and buy all my equipment. And let's go back to here. Okay. So that has been my list of top 10 equipment to get for starting out a budding percussionist. And yeah, if you are interested, definitely check it out. I mean, if you know a little bit about it and you're kind of eager, you can spend hours just browsing all the different materials, looking at all the artist spotlights, all the performances. I wonder if I can actually find an example of people using okay, I don't think I'm going to get copyrighted for this, but I'm going to silence my background music here. Remove that, yes. And now, let's see if I can play this. Hope it comes through. I wonder if that's actually coming through. Let me see my window. I want... Doesn't look like that's coming through. That's not. I really do want to show you this. Let's see how I can finagle the audio. Here we go. second. It's kind of hard to see. If you look at her hands, she's using what I call the Stevens grip, which is the most popular grip for marimba playing. And there you have it. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I'd like to say that I ever got to a point where I could play like that, but that was really just me just watching my teachers show off after the lesson was over how much they were holding out on us, how much they could really do. She wasn't my teacher, she's an artist, but the really good ones can get really, really good. So, that is it for today's stream. I had to cut it short because I'm streaming somewhere else right now. But next week, I don't know what we're doing next week. Next week we'll do something. You'll see the scheduled stream. It'll show you what it is later. But yeah, that was fun. And I could talk about this. I love doing this. I really need to go out. The pandemic has always hold us in, but I need to get out and find somewhere to play some more. Alright, with that being said, thank you all for listening. This has been Commander Poison Tongue, and I will see you all next week. Take care.